I'm Robin Johnson, and it's my pleasure to be speaking with Jonathan McFarland, who is the founder of Doctors as a Humanist and is also the organizer for an incredible symposium that's coming up in October called Medicine in the Arts. And this will be taking place in Barcelona, Spain. And we're going to be talking about that now. So, Jonathan, first of all, tell me about Doctor as a Humanist.
Well, Robin, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be speaking to you. I've had the pleasure to meet you and chat with you face to face, and to be asked to be interviewed by you is a real honor and privilege. I'm really excited. The Doctor as a Humanist was started in 2017. Basically, because I saw the need to connect not only the humanities as disciplines, but humanism in the widest sense of the word, meaning a more humane approach to treating people and medicine. I'm not the only one, but it's a long period of time, maybe 50, 60, 70 years, or even more, where medicine has become slowly more of a technique, or more of technological approach to treating diseases, rather than medicine as looking at the human being who is suffering. So I thought there was a great need to, let's say, restore the heart and soul to medicine and healthcare. Basically, that's it.
And it seems that some of these ways have been, are more common in some indigenous practices.
This is really interesting, Robin. What do you say? This is really interesting. In the middle of the pandemic, as you know, the pandemic was layered. So there was the virus killing people all around the world, and killing people, very often killing people in less privileged positions, no? or socio-economically lower down the strata, as it were. So, but also the mental health issue was something that struck me as being extremely important at the time of COVID, and now I would say it's a pandemic. So we did an online symposium called Nature and Medicine, restoring the balance between health and the earth. And as you say, we had incredible speakers from the Native American world. Or we had a speaker called Luis Mule Madrona, who I know you know, and his talk really was emotional. I would say emotional, intellectually stimulating, because he talked about the locality of healing. And also David Kapas, a psychiatrist from Seattle, who's very much in touch with the holistic side of medicine, and works with Joseph Ryle, who also a beautiful painted arrow. And the indigenous peoples around the world, because the Maoris, for example, the Aborigines, have always placed a great importance on the land and on the earth that they live in. And this is part of the healing process, to be in contact with the land you walk on, the land you have the privilege of walking on. As you were talking about the beautiful green grasses in Sweden, and you barefoot, you walk on this. So I think they have this innate connection with nature, which the Western world doesn't have.
Yes. And I think when they look at, let's say, illness in a person, they look at the whole person. and not just the specific ailment. Like their mental health, their, what's going on in their life. So it's much more inclusive than just the part.
And you've hit the nail on the head. This is the biggest problem or one of the main problems. Well, you could also talk about the economic kind of push from the pharmaceutical companies. But the fact that super specialization in medicine is obviously important. And technological advances are obviously important. I would never dismiss them because they have cured and saved many people. But there is this terrible tendency for doctors only to look at, if they're a specialist in a knee, they only look at the knee and they don't see the person. And a friend of mine is suffering this very strongly because he's seeing many doctors and he's a doctor himself. And they only see, they're blinkered like the horses when they go out of the stalls in the race. They're blinkered and they don't see past their speciality. They don't see the person. They see the disease.
Mm-hmm. How important is art to 21st century healthcare?
Well, this is a fabulous question. And I think art and the arts are truly important for the healthcare systems and for both the professionals and for the patients. I can give you a very beautiful example. There's a nurse who's a psychiatric nurse working in the hospital near us, Son Espaces. She's a supervisor for adolescent psychiatric patients. And she uses finger painting with young people with eating disorders. And as you know, eating disorders is a very complex disease, or maybe even you could say mixture of diseases. And one of the things is that the children or the young people have the inability to express their emotions. One of the things they feel is great anger at the world, probably anger at themselves. And so finger painting, at first, the kids say to the nurse, Eugenia is her name, say, I don't want to get dirty with paint. I don't, they're very conscious of their image, obviously. Okay, so they start painting fingers, just getting completely covered in paint, expressing their, rage running through them. And then at the end, they're all covered in paint and they're all hugging each other. And then they begin to speak to the nurse about their problems, about the things that really haunt them. And so this is one example.
Mm-hmm.
One example.
And the people that are coming to the conference, the presenters, can you speak about a few of them and what they'll be sharing?
Well, we have a very wide range of speakers. Mm-hmm. We have, for example, 2 members of the Global Arts Fellowship, which was founded by Kunle Adewale. Kunle Adewale is a Nigerian artist who began maybe 10 years ago projects painting in hospitals in Nigeria. And this has grown, and it's grown enormously. And now throughout Africa and developing countries, they have fellowships every year in arts therapy and arts and health. We have Manali Elawa, who is an Egyptian arts therapist working in Alexandria, working in a children's oncological hospital. Then we have a professor from Johns Hopkins University, or two, but one is Corey Sandon, who is the director of the Arts in Medicine department in Johns Hopkins University, which I think is probably the oldest in the world. She basically is an arts illustrator, but is also an expert in the art in anatomy books. Then we have architects talking about designing biophilic hospitals. Then we have the nurse I mentioned earlier. Then we have painters. We have a painter, a very famous painter called Perico Pastor, whose paintings he sends me by WhatsApp every morning. He sends me a painting. And he was a patient in the intensive care unit in a hospital, which is connected to the university. And he's going to talk about the artist as patient. We have another artist who will talk about the work she did in the 1980s and now painting surgeons in the operating theater. Curiously enough, and beautifully, she painted my father operating in the 1980s. So she will show images of his operations, but watercolors. Then we have medicine and photography, medicine and cine. We have experts in talking about medicine and TV series. We have a whole group of Egyptians coming from the Ministry of Museums and Antiquities who will be working in conjunction with the Egyptian Museum in Barcelona. We have from South Africa, Leonard Shapiro, who is an artist, but he's teaching in the University of Cape Town. He's teaching haptic drawing and haptic technique for the medical students. So they touch and they draw. He's going to do with Orania Varso, he's going to do a 4-hour workshop in a Museum of Modern Art of Barcelona. Then we have neuroscientists, philosophers, and so that we're going to have a debate between the neuroscientists and the philosophers about art and medicine. And also we have a beautiful case of a friend of mine, Mercedes Givalalde, who is a pediatric oncologist. Her mother had a stroke. Her mother, before the stroke, had never painted. She was not artistic. After the stroke, she started painting beautiful reproductions of Van Gogh. So Mercedes will show the paintings of Van Gogh and the MRI of her brain. And then the philosophers and the neuroscientists and the neurosurgeons will debate how this is possible. So we have a multitude of different. We have a nurse who would give an exhibition about collages from the pandemic. We have a linguist who will make cubes from children's interpretations through drawing and art of the pandemic. So many things.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I think it's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to attending. And I noticed on the registration page that there are two options, one for professionals and one for students. But is it only for professionals, like medical professionals, to attend, or professional artists?
This is something that I want to put straight, and if possible, we will change it. I'm not directly in control of the webpage, but my feeling always is that being inclusive, including everybody. In the Doctors of Humanists, I mean, people say the Doctors of Humanists, the name is a little bit exclusive, doctor. No. But the name, my idea is the more people from more fields, everybody who's interested in the arts, in health, and we're all interested in health, and most of us are interested in the arts, but everybody's interested in the world we live in are welcome. I mean, the more voices we hear, the more
Wonderful.
connections we make, the better.
Wonderful. And I noticed also from the webpage that there are many workshops that feel interactive, and visits to some of the museums, like the one you mentioned about the Egyptian Museum, and just a lot of opportunities to experience the richness of the conference besides just listening to people speak, which is very exciting also.
Well, I think listening to people speak is, needs its limited time. Like when you, there's some saying that a meeting after 1 hour is you can do the meeting in 1 hour. So listening to people is good, but one of the things we wanted to do was to make it interactive. One of the things we wanted to do is to allow the people who come, some students, anybody, to be able to use it in their daily practice and use it in their work. So we have, as you know, a lot of roundtables, and we have about 5 or 6 sections devoted or run by the students. And the students aren't only medical students. We have visual artists, we have linguists, etc. in the students group. It's roundtables and discussions, and the connections you make. In a meeting or a conference, sometimes it's not the plenary speakers who impress you the most. It's who you meet over a cup of coffee, who you meet who you meet in the art gallery. And we also have some fabulous. We have a representative from the World Health Organization, who is in charge of arts and health in the World Health Organization. And she said she'd like to give a plenary, she'd like to give a workshop because she wants to interact with the people, and she's going to oversee the students do a graffiti, an enormous graffiti. And the idea is the graffiti will express the emotions of the attendees. So imagine one attendee, they say, how do you feel? What's your feeling? Nervous. Okay, so they'll do a graffiti from that word. So yes, and music will play a part as well, Robin.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. So I think it's going to be a very enriching experience, and it's fabulous that you've created this event and are bringing an awareness of the necessity for humanities, our humanness, into the medical field. And yeah. So
I think it's so important, Robin, so important. I have a beautiful quotation, maybe to finish the interview, by a book which I think I mentioned to you earlier, Your Brain and Art, written by 2 Americans, Susan Magasman and Ivy Ross. And it says, art and science together are potent medicine.
beautiful.
This is true.
Mhm.
Art and science, art and medicine. Art and medicine historically have always been together. It's only in the last 80 years. And I was reading about the temple of Asclepius in I think in Crete, I'm not sure exactly, but in the times of Hippocrates, in the ancient Greeks, they healed in areas of great beauty, with a natural world around them, with fountains or with rivers, with prayer, with music. And these are something we've forgotten.
Yes, well, it's so important and wonderful to remember and to integrate that into our world now. Yeah.
Well, Robin, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, a real pleasure,
Thank
as
you.
always. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Barcelona, but I'm looking forward to seeing you before Barcelona.
Yes.
And well, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody who's interested in health and in the world around us.